We're coming at everybody after Thursday night's Game 2s, and we're going to start in the Western Conference, where the Dallas Mavericks scored a road victory over the Oklahoma City Thunder, 119-110. And this was, another Shaq phrase is coming into my mind, and this one's a little more derogatory. I don't know why Shaquille O'Neal's on the brain, but the guys that he likes to call the others, this game was about those guys in a lot of ways. And I think never more strongly illustrated than the end of the third quarter, Wes, where the Mavs go on a 16-7 run with Luka off the court and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the court. Right after, Mark Daigneault made the obvious but still pretty bold move of benching one of his starters and Josh Giddey, going extra small at times and daring the Mavs to play small. Dallas weathers that storm. They get Lou Dort in some foul trouble. Luka leaves the court. Kyrie's not even having a big scoring game, and yet that moment is when the Mavs make the run that gives them a lead that, that fourth quarter cushion they did not give up. Just a really impressive road win with a lot of different guys stepping up for a Dallas team that I don't think we think of as
They're not deep
necessarily.
But there's something else, and I'm not sure what the word is, right? You mentioned the run. Tim Hardaway Jr., 10 or 11 straight points. Just unreal. My favorite part of that run, too, was when Kyrie had the ball. Tim Hardaway was doing the thing where he gets parallel to the basket and has his palms out, like, give me the ball. I'm like, no, dude, Kyrie's got the ball. He'll tell you if you get to have the ball again. Just because you're on a heater doesn't mean that you've now taken the wheel on this thing. But
yeah, Tim Hardaway's legs on his jumpers, too, if we could just spend like 5 seconds on that. I feel like his jumper form has gotten worse as he's aged, and yet more entertaining at the same time. Like, there is nothing quite in the NBA like when that guy is hot, and somehow it keeps happening in playoff games.
You just want to entertain. That's how you stay in the league.
Yeah, you're just screwing around,
tickets, baby.
Yeah.
So no, you're right. They're not deep, but they're a mixed bag, and they're a little bit. It's like getting a lot of lottery tickets. I guess, like, theoretically your chances do get a little bit better. On the same night that P.J. Washington makes 7 3-pointers, on the same night that Tim Hardaway Jr. has that third quarter run, Derrick Jones Jr. goes 1 for 5 from three-point range. Kyrie Irving misses both of his three-pointers, right? They don't get a whole lot of help from other places. They have got enough streaky guys where if you just Jason Kidd's just got to be, all right, we're going to throw them all in there early in the game. We'll just see which one hits, right? It's a little bit like, just to use a different metaphor, it's almost like roulette, where it's just like, all right, is it going to be black or red tonight? I don't know. But whichever one it is, I'm riding it. And so, he got that from P.J. Washington, and he got that from Tim Hardaway. And another game this series, it'll be Derrick Jones Jr. doing it. Another game this series, it'll be Dante Exum or Josh Green or whoever else, right? And or hey, maybe it's even one of your stars or both of your stars in Luka and Kyrie. So Luka was a little hobbled with the ankle thing, but he was still able to spoon feed those P.J. Washington corner threes and all the stuff that he was doing. He was still really impactful. And that's how the Dallas Mavericks team is built. They're sort of just built this way. And when you get hot enough, right, where you go 18 for 37 overall from three-point range, almost 49%, and then the Thunder shoot 33%, and you win by 9 points, yep, that's how that happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating with Oklahoma City because obviously I think the kind of punchiest headline coming out of this game for them will be the Giddey benching, and he's minus 20 in 11 minutes. It doesn't get much worse than that. It's honestly hard to do. Yeah, and we all saw that coming, right? And it's this thing of where, because the Mavs are putting their center on him, taking Chet off the court is what obviously would be going small for them. And they do that sometimes. But taking Giddey off the court is supposed to be this chess move that forces the Mavs to adjust, because you're not giving them anywhere to hide their more traditional centers in Gafford and Lively anymore. But again, Kidd just stiff-armed that adjustment, stayed big the whole time, played off Aaron Wiggins, maybe Lou Dort, who's honestly been just as hot in the playoffs as he was in the regular season as a shooter, but I guess it's a pick your poison type of situation, and they've just kind of made it work. Meanwhile, again, like you said, the Mavs shooters are on fire tonight, but I did have this worry with Oklahoma City, setting aside even the Giddey of it all. They were the number one three-point shooting team in the regular season, and you hear that get thrown around a lot. I assumed we would see teams bet that even the guys like an Aaron Wiggins, even like a Dort for that matter, who made those shots in the regular season, just wouldn't in the playoffs. And I think, this game was close. They're a great team. They have a lot of other strengths, but I think that is going to continue to be a test that they have to solve every single night as teams get more confident going to it, especially a team like Dallas that needs their centers out there. Shea is shooting 33% from deep in the playoffs. Chet is shooting 29%. Those other guys don't have a ton of volume, and I mentioned Dort's been awesome. So it's not really this huge cold streak. I just think it's a matter of how are you guarding them. And so far, the Mavs have been able to get away with, we're not going to overreact to open threes from some of these 7th, 8th, 9th guys on this roster.
They did hang back off of Aaron Wiggins a little bit and even off of Lou Dort a little bit. And the whole strategy of we're going to have our center, usually Gafford, hanging off of Josh Giddey, it works, right? It does, or to a degree, it works enough to the point where at least Mark Daigneault was like, we got to get off the floor. My question is, did Dallas go too far? And is this going to backfire on them? Because the whole idea of kind of like cutesy defense and playing Giddey off the court is that you don't respect him as a shooter. And by the way, he's not a good shooter. But if you get the Thunder to replace him with a better shooter and ostensibly a better matchup against you, you've kind of done their work for them a little bit. And I do wonder if they went a little too whole hog on the we're just going to ignore Josh Giddey completely, where it might have behooved them to mix it up a little bit and not do it so much, because Daigneault has been reluctant in taking Giddey out of the starting lineup. But I think now we've reached that breaking point. I would be very surprised if we got to Game 3 and we didn't see and we saw Giddey in the starting lineup. I think we'll see somebody else, probably Aaron Wiggins, I would just imagine, because that's who started the second half. But I don't know. I'm curious. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but it's something I'm monitoring going forward in the series.
Well, the other thing we saw, right, in terms of the big man kind of chess game that's happening here is they played in the first half even more of the Will, the other Jalen Williams, the bench Jalen Williams, and
that's
Chet
how it started in the first 6
together,
minutes,
which they did at. That's how they guarded Joker at times in the regular season. It's a button they've pushed very sporadically, but that's really that's their big lineup. That's their answer for size. And so, that can be an option going forward. I guess the counterpoint to what you said as far as, where Dallas's kind of next moves and adjustments go after that is, hey, they stole a road game and they still have the PJ Washington at center thing to try themselves. They haven't had to go to it. They haven't had to become uncomfortable either. Maybe there's a version of a game in the future of this series where they do play that, and
less for
and it
Dallas,
works out.
Though,
but
because you are taking one of your best 5 players off the court in that instance, right? I would think Gafford is one of their better 5 players. Where the Oklahoma City version of that is, I don't know that Giddey is one of their best 5 players, and you're kind of forcing them to put their better 5 players on the court. Like I said, it's not necessarily going to sink them in this series. I just think it's a little. I do wonder if ever since basically the Warriors used Andrew Bogut to guard Tony Allen, that everybody's like, well, I want to do that, and once they get the chance to do it, they just sort of do it.
Yeah.
And I think teams are getting smart enough in figuring out how to counter it. And Daigneault, the coach of the year, I think he could do that.
Well, and like I said, right, I mean, Chet actually is, if you're just playing the math from just the playoffs, he's the guy you should play off. So it's almost like put Gafford on him, play drop. If Chet's in the corner, play off him the same way you are these other wing guys and make him. I mean, he's a young guy. He's unproven. Right. He's not making shots right now. It's just as good a bet as anything else. But we'll see how that goes.
Derrick Jones Jr. down the stretch in this one, and he was basically doing the same song and dance, right, where he was just playing off of Derrick Jones and betting and daring him to shoot. I like that the Thunder do that more reactionary because they see, okay, Derrick Jones Jr. doesn't have it going tonight, so we're gonna just play off of it and kind of bet on that. I would like to see teams do that more than just come right out the gate with it. But maybe that's just a personal preference. Whatever. I already said my point on that. So that.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to hit on is Kyrie in this game. You mentioned Luka.
Great
Why is his
question.
knee
I don't
bleeding?
know if it's a Kurt Schilling bloody sock thing, but it's whatever. And he's like getting into it with fans on the sideline. It was a very clunky game from him.
It's a little bit of like Frankenstein's monster vibes, I'm going to be honest, because he's just such an imposing physical presence in the first place. Then you add the bleeding, and then you add the like talking shit to random people, and it's a scary situation. It's also scary when, as we're talking about threes, him hitting his first couple and getting into a rhythm from deep is probably like the single biggest thing that happened in this game that hadn't been happening, because I believe he came into this one 5 of 35 in his last 35 attempts. But Kyrie, his co-pilot here, I feel so vindicated because when I was like 18, 19 years old watching those first Cavs LeBron Kyrie pairings, Wes, I was always feeling like Kyrie was a better defender than maybe he got credit for. And in the moments when it was him against Curry or him against Clay or whatever the case was, that he had a little more juice than some of these smaller guards often do. And I feel like from what he did against Harden in that first round to now what he's done against both J-Dub and Shea in this series, that's as big of a value, especially on a night when he's not doing much as a scorer, as anything he's done in the postseason. And I mean, that has to be highlighted and underlined and everything else, because they're not here without that impact from him.
Where he was a fan. And look, that's all you need at the end of the day from your smaller point guard. If you don't expect him to be Drew Holiday, and you don't, because he's Kyrie Irving, then you just need moments. You need a game here or there. You don't need him to do it every single night. You just don't. But on a night, to your point, where he doesn't really have it from a scoring point perspective, like, okay, you could just sort of dial the knobs in little different directions. Like, okay, I'm going to be more of a playmaker, and I'm really going to put my effort in defensively. And credit to him for acknowledging that and just being like, okay, I guess PJ Washington is carrying us on offense today. I guess Tim Hardaway is carrying us. I'm going to let him he's going to call for it. I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to defend my butt off. And he does. He's stronger than I think people give him credit for. He's got a little bit of a longer wingspan than you think he does. Yeah. And he tries. He works really hard. He's able to get skinny and get over those screens. He's really smart. He knows where he has to be. He's not one of these guys that gets lost. If he's really dialed in, he's not going to end up ball watching and get backdoor cutting all that much. Obviously guys can still throw lobs over the top of him, but he's in the right place positionally, generally speaking. And he does give a lot of effort. And like I said, you don't need it all the time, but when you do need it, he can give it.
He's just a more physical player than I think people would think, because of how finesse and pretty his offensive game can be, but he can finish through contact in a crowded area. He can ISO. He can post up. He has that in his game. So I just think there's a little more bump and physicality to him, and I think that serves him well on the defensive end when he's healthy, when he's feeling right. Obviously, there's the clapping at Giannis in the 2018 series in Boston. There's some ugly moments. There's some lowlights within that history, but yeah, again, if you're talking about can you steal one road game because a bunch of weird stuff happens and Kyrie playing awesome defense is one of those things, absolutely, it just happened. He also, like you mentioned, created a bunch of those threes, 11 assists tonight as well. But yeah, where do you think this goes for Oklahoma City? Do you think this game worries you for them as far as kind of this first postseason, the first punch that they've received after sweeping New Orleans, and now they lose one at home?
Shooting, I do think there's things that they have to clean up, and even beyond the starting lineup too. The turnovers, you got to start there. 10 turnovers for them in this game. That led to 18 points off those turnovers for Dallas. You can almost blame that more for the loss than just the 3-point variance, because you're giving away shot attempts and you're giving Dallas easy points in transition. By the way, 10 of those turnovers, 8 of them were steals. So the easiest kind of turnovers to score off of, right? They need to clean up some of the lazy passes. Yep. You got to clean that stuff up. We can give credit to Dallas' defense as much as we want, but I'd say about half of those things were just lazy, dumb, bad passes. And so if you clean that up, that's great. Do that first. I expect them to. They're not really a big turnover team. I think they'll be fine there. And the other part is, you got to figure out the starting lineup and what you kind of want to do. I think that is a fair question. Do you go Isaiah Joe to try to space the floor a little bit more with Dallas trying to take away the paint? Do you go Aaron Wiggins and kind of do the best of both worlds in terms of a guy who can knock down open shots, but also gives you a little bit more defensively and can cut to the basket. We'll see what they do with it. And I do question whether or not Giddey has I don't think he'll be out of the rotation completely, but what are we talking about? Like 8 minutes a game?
I mean, if he's not starting,
right?
It's tough to see where those minutes come from. But I mean, in terms of cleaning things up, I guess I would just say I think after Luka got off to the hot start, combined with Dort's foul trouble, I think you'll probably see a game plan from the Thunder in Game 3 that's a little bit more help oriented toward Luka. Whether that's they were doing the late double thing where if he's kind of stranded out on the perimeter, you saw them force a couple turnovers that way. I guess he only turned it over once. Maybe it was just one where, okay, now go send that extra body and be a little bit confusing as to where that help's coming from because all their players are the same exact size. So it kind of doesn't matter from their standpoint. Maybe switching more, maybe earlier doubles, just not put Dort on an island, especially if Luka is feeling his step back three more. That just makes the single coverage kind of even goofier because he's just going to beat it if he can make that shot.